Hello Australia and welcome to the BAP. Joining me today is Jason Murphy, returning after a 3-week sabbatical. Not joining us today is Dean, the content man. So you know what that means. We're going to have very slim content for today's show. So yeah, we're going to have to try and wing today's show to some extent. I mean, I do have some notes.
To an entire extent, I think. Wing it.
What's been happening, Jace? What's been keeping you busy?
Just working stuff, man. And it's been such that I haven't even my exposure to news, apart from listening to the odd podcast, has been the experience of opening a newspaper at work, which I don't normally get to see the West Australian newspaper. So it's kind of an experience. So
you were saying off air that you have started to listen to the Michael Brooks show. How have you been finding it?
It's okay, but the Michael Brooks show is good. They have some good guests and things like that, and he talks about interesting subjects. But, you know, I think we've both admitted that there can be too much Michael Brooks. Yeah,
indeed.
And but the interesting thing that is what they're setting this channel up for is there's a lot of input from Matt Leck on the Patreon on the Patreon shows. So the ones that the premium shows you only get if you're a sponsor. There's a bit more Matt Leck and the other producers and things like that. And they also are using Discord to do some community, sort of develop an online community. So Discord's best known as a voice, an audio device, an audio program for gamers. So they can get like team voice chat up for gaming. Yep. And Discord has usually been used for that in the past, but now they're developing it up as a bit of almost like a content presentation platform and things like that.
Well, is that so that the presenters of the show don't have to be in the same room type thing?
It's using they're not using it they're not specifically using it to publish the show, but you can go in there and it'll be like standard text chat channels, but there's also some voice chat channels.
Oh, I get what you mean. So yeah, the community can chat
amongst themselves. And I've gone in there a few times and there'll be like, you know, half a dozen up to a dozen people sometimes.
So do you take on the Obama bots?
Well, there's no Obama bots. I think you'd struggle to find an Obama bot in there.
Right.
They're mostly rabid lefties, like the kind of lefties that think. Some of them are very critical of, say, the Young Turks and think they're Russian stooge. They're corporate stooges, and I'm going like, Jesus. If the Young Turks are not far enough left, if you're going to call them corporate stooges, then you're pretty out there.
Well, swinging into a douchebag filter, if I said to you, Takeshi Kovacs, what would you respond back to me?
Altered Carbon.
Yes, the 2002 novel by I can't even pronounce his name. Later,
it's Richard Morgan's the name of the author.
Is it? Maybe I read the Wikipedia thing wrong, grabbed the wrong name.
Well, Richard Morgan's the author.
Okay.
And he wrote a series of 3 books. Altered Carbon, Broken Angels, and I cannot remember the name of the third one. And they were excellent.
Are they a continuing storyline between the 3 books?
Same character. The interesting thing is the premise of this. It's 300 or 400 years in the future.
Yes.
And the premise of the basis of that society is that you can just transfer your consciousness from body to body.
Yep.
Everyone's got a stack installed in their body where their consciousness can be stored and uploaded and stuff like that. So the interesting thing is the main character in this wears up to half a dozen different skins during the books and things like that.
So tech up the skins and stuff.
Some of the skins, the bodies are genetically, or they're grown, and they can be produced to be, you know, like superhuman kind of bodies to some extent. Maybe not breaking physics or anything like that, but like there's certainly in the book.
If I recall, the first upgraded body he gets is a ninja body or something.
He does get like some kind of tech ninja, they call it, or something like that. It's not his first body. That was at the end of the first book. That was pretty good.
The reason I brought this up, it's not a random occurrence. Yeah. Netflix is bringing out Altered Carbon series.
I saw the preview to it, the trailer.
Yes.
And it looked pretty good. I mean, if they can't make it look good in a trailer, then you're kind of lost. But it's going to be interesting because I don't know if they've ever had a show where the main character, they're expecting the audience to bond with the main character who maybe they'll have to physically put in a different, like they'll have to physically have different actors playing or actresses even playing.
Another Sense8 scenario.
Yeah. Well, not really Sense8 in that they're distinct people, so that was not an issue. But this will be one character who is inhabiting different bodies.
Yeah. They seem to have gone from the trailer, from what I can glimpse of it, it's seemingly Blade Runner-ish.
Well, that was the feel for the...
Yeah, it's a crime novel.
Well, it's a crime novel, but Blade Runner-ish in the world type of thing as well.
Yeah.
Except I think I get the feeling it's a little less grimy, always raining ecological disaster dystopia kind of thing, which is what Blade Runner was. It's a little bit less of that. It's like they seem to arrest the failing of the Earth to some extent, and because they started moving off world and stuff like that as well.
I don't seem to recall if the puzzle was solved at the end of the book, because I read this book back in 2003. So it's,
the what was solved?
Well, the premise of it is basically a billionaire is killed.
Yep.
He's basically he couldn't get his identity back into the stack or whatever it was.
He didn't want to let his identity back into the stack.
Oh, was that what it was?
Yeah, he'd been infected with a virus, and if he got it back into the stack, it was going to infect his backups and things like that. So the whole thing was he knew the issue, what he had there, and he knew it was such a virulent thing that he couldn't let it anywhere near his backups. So he offed himself before it could get anywhere, kind of thing. And it's an well, that's probably spoilerish, but. You know what? And I cannot remember. There's a few different arcs moving throughout the 3 books.
Yes.
And I cannot remember them. It's been a while since I've read it, but I just remember being like, seeing this show come up like this for me is a little bit along the lines of the excitement I had when Lord of the Rings was getting made.
Yeah. Well, as soon as I saw that, I immediately thought Jason would be very excited about this. I almost texted you.
Dean was the one that sent me the link, I think.
Did he?
Australia,
yeah. He knows you're a bit of an Altered Carbon fanbot.
Oh, it's great stuff. And he hasn't really done much since Richard Morgan, but he did write another book called, it came out under a couple of different titles. It was 13 or Black Man, which was, he decided, I remember reading about it, he decided he wanted to explore certain things in his science fiction that couldn't be done in a world where someone is essentially immortal. You know, there's almost no sense, to some extent, there's no sense of dread, like the potential of being killed in the Altered Carbon world. If you've got enough money, because you got your storage, you can always be pulled off stack and you can be reskinned into another body. So there's a certain amount of lack of mortality, which meant that he couldn't explore certain kind of themes. So he created another world where I liked it as well. I thought it was fantastic, but he hasn't made a sequel to that one yet. So
maybe made enough coin to be able to relax and not have
possibly.
to worry.
He also wrote a really crappy kind of one called Market Forces, which was an interesting kind of thing. It was like a Mad Max becomes sort of a near future dystopia where corporate struggles, like a corporate executive might jump into his souped up bloody weaponized vehicle and go out, and he'd actually duel with someone it was a really weird kind of corporate structure. It was satirical to a great extent, but it didn't really work for me. Anyway, good author Richard Morgan. It's definitely worth checking out. Altered Carbon.
February 2nd, I believe.
And the TV series, wow.
I've gotten halfway through Narcos season 3, really enjoying it. Sort of, I was quite impressed how much I thought, I'd seen the first 2 series, which was about the Medellin cartel.
Yep.
And I thought, well, this is going to be more of the same. And to an extent it is, but it's still enjoyable.
To some extent, but it's a different story about a very different bunch of narco terrorists.
There is that, but I mean, at the end of the day, they're still terrorists. So that, it's more of the same of Pablo, just different personality types. But they're exploring the arc of the security chief, which is interesting.
It's an interesting arc. Like and if you're halfway through, I won't ruin it for you, but that just keeps developing, and it's quite well done.
Yeah.
So he's like, he knows he's in too deep, and he doesn't really. He's in deep in a situation where he doesn't really want to be.
He thought he could walk the line between taking narco dollars and yet
and being a respectable, honourable kind of person, and you just realise it just doesn't work that way. You're going to be asked to do shit that you don't want to do.
You slowly get dragged in. So yeah, no, that's been really interesting. I'm really struggling with the Punisher. Really struggling.
I haven't even jumped in on that one at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been.
I haven't had a chance to really get into any new TV series lately. Actually, it's been a little bit lame. I did get a new computer, so any spare time I've had at all has been playing a couple of different games. But, getting into one called Darkest Dungeon, which is pretty cool, but defies kind of simple description.
You did send me a link to a video. I haven't had a chance to read, but it was a new game.
A new board game called Gloomhaven.
Gloomhaven.
That looks amazing. Like it was just, it looks interesting, but at first look, and this is the way the guy describes it. At first look, it could be just a big box game that got a lot of plastic pieces.
We've never been afraid of that in our little social group.
But he went. This guy. This is from Shut Up and Sit Down is the name of the site, and he is just raving about this game, completely raving about it, saying just the way they've structured it and the way there's a certain amount of hidden elements that give it so much replayability, and it looks really interesting. It's very expensive, but I'm considering it as a purchase myself because it's more like a game along the lines of Imperial Assault, with a more a proper ongoing campaign, more.
There's a bit more to it.
Coupled ongoing campaign and a bit more to it. Yeah, a little bit more to it as well.
Oh, so it is an ongoing campaign.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like Arkham Horror.
Yeah, actually, probably a little bit more like Arkham Horror because your characters are essentially a deck of cards as well that you're playing out, and as you're using these cards and not getting them back, then that's a time limit in itself. So, but it just looked really good, and the guy was just raving about it. And these are guys, the kind of reviewers that I trust quite a bit. So, if he's raving about it, it might be worth it.
Might be a place where you can spend some of those hard-earned dollars.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I've got for Douchebag Filter. What are you?
No, as I said, I haven't been reading or been playing Darkest Dungeon, a little bit of The Witcher 3, which is an amazing game, which I can't rate
but that's an old game, isn't it? Relatively,
it's a couple of years old, but man, there's not many games of its kind that are better than it at the moment.
Yeah,
and it's still the leading example of its type. Well, that's about it.
The only game I played was my pinball machine from 1992. So I've got a lot to catch up on. If that's where I'm starting from. In the news this week, we saw Senator Sam Dastyari has announced he's going to resign from Parliament.
He's a traitor. He should be strung up. He should be strung up. This is...
So for people who aren't familiar, Sam Dastyari had previous troubles with his dealings with Chinese nationals who allegedly had opaque relationships with the Communist Party, the ruling Communist Party, and it just became revealed recently that a Chinese prominent Chinese businessman who donated to various politicians and parties here in Australia, he was having a meeting with this prominent Chinese businessman, and he said, we should leave our phones here and go talk outside because you're probably being bugged.
Because ASIO may be listening.
Not a good look for an Australian diplomat to be giving foreign nationals a heads up on what our security services might do.
So what's the rule, Franco? Is it are we not allowed to? It's okay to take money from local billionaires, Australian billionaires, and spout their talking points, but it's not okay to take money from foreign billionaires and spout their talking points. Is that what I'm thinking is the rule?
I don't think either of them is appropriate, but
one you'll get in trouble for and one you won't. I mean, Australian politicians have been taking money from Australian mining magnates for a long fucking time, and
like inaugural farming awards.
Just taking money from your Gina Reinhardts and things like that, and quite happy to spout their talking points. It just seems like the local billionaires get pissed off if the foreign billionaires start buying off their local politicians.
Well, there's that, but I think it's more that it's easy pickings for the opposition party.
Oh, it's definitely
either
easy
side
pickings.
to find a way that, especially in a government that has a very slim majority to go.
But for practically speaking, to the people that matter, i.e. us poor folk down here, it's just another billionaire paying off to get something they want, because I don't think that Australian billionaires have your or my welfare at heart any more than any foreigner does.
Not by any means.
And they're certainly affecting the course of politics here in Australia a lot more than the Chinese are.
Mm-hmm. Well, all the Chinese care about is the South China Seas.
Yeah, well, they probably have a lot of business interests here that
they do. Yeah,
they want to push as well. But this is also sort of carries over to the whole thing with, not to excuse Donald Trump in any way, but the whole collusion with Russia thing. It just seems like it's the brand of the billionaire that is paying off or providing assistance to someone is the thing that seems to be.
It's all right to have, if you're in America, have collusion with the Saudis.
Saudis. There's a good example. I was going to say they're allowed to collude with any local American billionaires they want and get all the money from them they want. But if they accept it from a country that's out of favour, then all of a sudden it's treasonous. You know what I mean? It's just very selective as to how they.
We get a lot of collusion with. Would you classify Rupert Murdoch as Australian?
Well, that's what I mean. It's so arbitrary and really pointless. When it's just an individual wanting to express their will in a certain direction.
Well, I think there's
and nationality. I guarantee nationality doesn't really mean shit to them.
I don't want to step up to plate to start defending billionaires by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there is a slight difference between a billionaire representing their own interests and a billionaire representing the interests of another state.
It's only
that's what was the issue was.
It's only that their form of government is is more overtly an oligarchy where the wealthy are the ones running the show.
I think you might find that
it's just a little more
Australian
indirect.
billionaires might find themselves falling afoul in a similar situation if they were, say, representing Israel's interests, for example.
Maybe not if they're representing Israel. And we don't mind Israel.
Yeah.
You'd have to pick someone. As I said, it has to be someone out of favour. If it's Saudi interests, we might be going along with that as well. It all depends on which billionaires are doing the paying.
So do you think? I think Sam's done the right thing here and resigned from Parliament. Yeah, it wasn't a good look.
No, you can't. It's not good not good optics, not good politics.
No. So that caught my eye this week.
It was a bit silly that he was so blatant with his comments, right? It was just out of nowhere he decides he's got this massive opinion on the South China Sea and has to spout these talking points. Just like, come on, guy, make it a little less obvious.
Did you see this week Labor in WA, Western Australia state news? The Labor Party has come out with a winning policy of cutting funding to schools.
Where the fuck does this come from?
Well, basically, they've had to find where they can cut the budget because they couldn't get through their mining tax, the gold tax they were trying to put through. So now they got to cut. The government coffers
so
are losing funds.
Those 300 people whose jobs may have been, but probably wouldn't have been affected, that made the advertising on TV. They're going, well. If you got to take it from the kids, what do we care?
Yeah,
it's like we're okay. We're okay, Jack.
Well, we're gonna defend the jobs that aren't really even there anymore, that the kids can take it.
That's right. Kids can take it. So that's a disaster waiting to happen. Education funding's already low, and it just keeps getting lower. So. What's the way out for the local government? They're not going to be able to raise any more taxes. They're just going to keep reining in services.
And just hope the mining boom comes back.
Apparently it is to some extent. I don't know. You can never trust the kind of news that is telling you the mining boom's back.
There was good news this week, actually. The Alabama race for a new senator to replace Luther Strange, who was in the acting role for Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
Indeed, the Democrats narrowly beat an outright pedophile.
Yes.
By just over a percentage point, I think.
It was very close, very close. Roy Moore didn't want to. I don't know if Roy Moore's yet conceded. Which,
to be fair, that state is usually what they consider a plus 20% state kind of thing. Like never any chance of a Democrat getting in. However,
they haven't had a Democrat for like 30 years or something like that.
However, this time around, the coalition of apparently black American women coming out to vote, and the fact that the guy was just an outright fucking pedophile.
But even that, outright pedophile. I don't know. There was lots of accusations that are yet to be proven. Although where there's smoke,
The,
there's
the,
seemingly
the guy
fire.
had to get banned from a mall twice.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's enough documented sort of evidence of him dating underage girls.
Yeah.
And their arguments that that was acceptable back then. You know what? That was the 70s. I'm not even sure it was acceptable back then.
I don't think so. But yeah, there was a lot of smoke and a lot of accusations coming out about Roy Moore having undue attention towards teenage girls when he was in his early 30s.
And one of the most amusing things was because they wanted to get on top of that narrative in some way. They had one of his war buddies come out and tell this supposedly amusing anecdote of how Roy Moore wouldn't sleep with the underage prostitutes when they were in Vietnam. It was like he was telling an anecdote about how they went to this private club and Roy was outraged that there were underage prostitutes there. This is a story that I'm putting out there.
I sometimes forget this is radio and not TV because the furrowing of my brow that makes.
Yeah, this was supposed to make him more sympathetic, a more sympathetic character.
Oh dear!
And needless to say, it didn't work.
I didn't realise Roy Moore had gone to Vietnam.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, apparently he served over there for a while.
Yeah. I mean, he has an ugly past when it comes to politics. He famously had a stone inscribed with the Ten Commandments in his courthouse.
That's right.
He was removed 3 times as a judge. I think it was 3 times. It was something like that.
So yeah, for disobeying a federal order or something like that. Yeah.
But that obviously made him a fantastic candidate to run as the Republican nominee. We had Trump and then the Republican machine decide to get behind Roy Moore after initially sort of stepping away
Isn't
from
it
him.
bizarre? So in the middle of this outrage that's happening over there with the Me Too movement and all the men being outed as for sexual harassment and things like that. So in the middle of all that, and in particular, you had someone like Al Franken getting busted for sexual harassment and having to bite the bullet and resign.
Yeah.
And then in that pretty much, I think it was the same week, you had Roy Moore possibly getting a pedophile, well, unconvicted pedophile, looking like he was almost going to get elected, like he was going to get re-elected.
And like people adamantly, even with all these accusations coming out saying, we don't believe it and we're going to vote for him anyway.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to have a Democrat.
Isn't it crazy how much the tribalism is bad here, but it's ridiculous.
Although you did have the governor of Alabama saying he was going to what they call, they got a special term where you write another candidate in the space when you go to vote. So for whatever reason, they're unable to vote for a Democrat in their mind. They can't do it.
They write in someone else.
Write in, that's what it's called. So that how much of an effect the write in?
I don't know. Can we write in on our ballots? I don't think that's anything that's recognised. Over there, it is thrown out. It is recognised as a legitimate way to vote. You can write in anyone you want.
Yeah.
But but the chance of a write-in candidate being successful is just
it's not high.
Yeah.
So that was great news to see what seemingly was a very despicable candidate.
It was great to see something sane happen. You know what I mean?
I think we got the same result. It still concerned me that it was still that close with such a despicable character.
But it was good that the result came out the right way. Because, I mean, if it hadn't, it just would have been...
Very miserable day.
Oh, miserable day.
Someone with such a sketchy past has now got a seat of prominence, which doesn't seem to worry.
Did you catch the other thing with that? Because they were getting hassled for being anti-Semite.
Oh, that's right. That's Roy Moore's wife, Kayla.
So his wife came out and said, well, we can't be anti-Semitic. We got a Jew lawyer.
Yeah. When I heard that, I was going, wow, you couldn't sound any more racist if you tried trying not to be racist.
I know, it's crazy. They just don't understand. They don't get it. They don't get it. What do you mean? And our accountants are Jews, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, very disturbing. So that was good news this week. Also, we had... Well, most people probably are unaware of this, but I found it fascinating. Was a show we love dearly to listen to called the Majority Report by Sam Cedar was trolled by a.
Oh yeah.
I still can't get my head around who he is. This weird Mike Cernovich.
Weird Mike Cernovich. He's.
I did a bit of research on the web, and I couldn't really get anything concrete about
He
how
came to fame during the Gamergate sort of experience when that was going on.
Because he was, from what I know, he was part of the manosphere.
He's like an MRA kind of guy, men's rights activist kind of dude, very much on the pickup artist kind of thing. He's written a book called The Gorilla Mindset, which I don't know. So he calls himself one of the world's foremost mindset expert. I don't know if is that a field. I don't know. Anyway, he came to fame during the Gamergate thing, obviously pounding down on women that were trying to be women in game journalism and female game critics and things like that, which were just getting pounded by online trolls and stuff like that. And he was one of them. And he obviously has some kind of connection in through Breitbart, something that allowed him to get a bit of insider information coming in from people that, if Trump hadn't been elected, would have been nobodies and forgotten. But because Trump got elected, all of a sudden he had an inside run to some of these people, getting a little bit of information. So he would be able to scoop some things every now and then and come out with some interesting tidbits of information.
Like Pizzagate.
And then he was also one of the guys behind Pizzagate, which he fervently denies, even though there's video footage taken by him talking about Pizzagate.
Yeah, that's
it's just insane. He flat out lies. He flat out lies. And so that's what brought him to the run-in with Sam.
Yes. So
because they found an old tweet of Sam's from 2009 where he was satirizing and mocking people who were defending Roman Polanski. So there were people there saying, Roman Polanski, yes, he's done some dodgy things, but he's an amazing producer, amazing director and everything else. And
dodgy by raping a 13-year-old and pretty much got convicted of it. And he ran away. He got convicted in Absentina, I believe.
So Sam basically tweeted mockingly saying, well, if my daughter gets raped, I certainly hope it's by a richer older gentleman who is a director who has an amazing sense of mise-en-scene.
Yes.
And it was clearly satirical. Anyway, they dug this up, and because of the outrage machine that's going on over there, Mike Cernovich fired some emails off with these tweets to Sam's employer at MSNBC and some of their sponsors, and they lost a bit of sponsorship, and he got temporarily fired.
Yes, by MSNBC, who sort of wanted to avoid controversy and without sort of even doing some sort of research, just summarily fired him.
And then they did hire him back when someone pointed out. Actually, there was significant momentum. There was a big backlash.
Yeah, Chris Hayes.
But not only that, just people on Twitter and that, and that's pretty much where Cernovich lives, is on the Twitter sphere kind. So if Twitter for some reason ever stops being quite so relevant, which it is very much in danger of doing, Mike Cernovich will cease being relevant to some extent as well. They rehired him. They rehired Sam back, and if anything, from what I hear, their subscriptions have gone through the roof.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like it's been fantastic publicity for them. And now Mike Cernovich is in deep shit.
Yes, because he got someone sent him a hoax thing about Chuck Schumer.
No one's quite certain whether. So
he's claiming it was
Mike Cernovich and another guy. What's his name? Roger Stone? Is it the guy? No, it was Charles Johnson or something. Another right wing troll. Said they had some documentation that could bring down a major US senator. And it turned out it was a forged sexual harassment complaint.
Huh.
And I was thinking this, because one thing that, as a follower, I follow Mike Cernovich until he just blocked me this week.
You got blocked, but you're becoming famous. Why did you get blocked?
Oh, well, because he was rabbiting on about how, saying how everyone's lying about how he said anything about Pizzagate. And I said, but I pointed him to the video of him actually saying something about it, and I got blocked.
You got blocked? Wow.
Yeah. He says he never blocks people, but he does. Anyway, where were we? He often puts out messages. He says, I will pay thousands of dollars for any material that will, any scoop material, like basically trying to get any dirt on anyone.
Yeah.
And he said outright, I don't know if he ever actually does pay anyone or anything like that. Anyway, when this popped up that this document had been forged, I went, clearly some enterprising person out there has gone, Mike will pay for something like this, and gotten hold of the template and just dodged it up.
Yeah.
And Mike and that... so if they didn't do it themselves, then they're too stupid to realise that it was an obvious forgery.
Yeah.
and now they're in trouble with the Capitol Police because it's a felony to be so blatant, to blatantly lie like that kind of thing, and present a forged document to do that kind of libel.
To bring a senator into disrepute.
I think anyone into disrepute. The way they did that, they can prove that there was malice
or malintent. Yeah. That's fascinating. And I'm just staggered that you've got an individual here. Well, not staggered, it's probably too dramatic a term, but someone who claims they don't block people, but then they block people.
I don't know how he maintains any kind of reputation, because anyone who pays any attention to him, even if they like him, you can see him self-owning constantly. Like, he's constantly doubling back on stuff that he says, and I don't know how he has the follower base that he has. It's really weird.
It is really bizarre, because I went to his Twitter, and I'm starting to get it. I've never been into Twitter for whatever reason, and I'm starting to get a little bit into it only because I like watching morons.
Yeah. I know it's a target-rich environment, Franco.
And I went to Mike Cernovich's Twitter page, and what a feast that is. And he's really excited about, who is it now? Chris Matthews busted for sexual harassment. So I don't understand why he's so excited about others getting accused about sexual harassment when he doesn't have the best track record.
No,
when it comes to
he had
his
to plead down a rape to a sexual harassment charge.
Right.
I don't know, but his standard operating procedure is to find someone online, and he's done it to a few people, and just accuse them of pedophilia.
Yeah.
And then get his own followers to all, to retweet and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's just constantly accusing people of pedophilia. It's to the point where he does it so often where you got to think it's almost like a projection thing. You know what I mean? It's really weird. But then he's a weird guy. But
I wonder what his position on Roy Moore was.
He didn't comment on Roy.
Well,
you know what I mean?
partisan.
That's what they do. They don't comment on those things. So the fact that Donald Trump is the pussy grabber in chief doesn't matter to them. Just does not matter. But he'll quite happily misread a tweet intentionally to get someone else fired. But he'll totally ignore the Trump and the Roy Moore kind of situation. It's bizarre. And you watch it. He brings his wife every now and then and things like that. It's like, I don't know how why do you do this? Why do you do this?
He's got 386,000 followers.
He's got a lot, man. He's got a whole heap.
It's bizarre. And he's actually really annoying to listen to with that lisp he's got.
Yeah, and he did it.
And I don't mean to come down on people's lists. I'm sure people's lists can have excellent...
I remember Chapo Trap House were reviewing his book, and he's got an audio book, and he actually voices the whole thing himself. And they said, you know what? Respect, because to be able to voice your entire book with that list, he says, that's effort, man. We're going to give him points for that.
And I don't quite understand what people enjoy about his little vlogs. They're quite weird.
They're weird. They're disjointed.
I mean, in this particular video, the one that's top of his list now, he's really, embellishing his the scoop. Well, he's perceived that he had the scoop on this because he's saying, I had a tweet where this was going to be announced.
He's looking for a win because he's had a couple of losses in a row, kind of thing, and he's just trying to maintain some level of credibility, I think.
I mean, if the whole angle of your vlog and blogging is Schadenfreude, and it doesn't.
See, the funny thing is, and this is even before I wasn't paying that much attention to Twitter, but they had Matt Binder on the Majority Report. He's the old producer, one of the old producers in the Majority Report, and he's the encyclopedia of MRA stuff. His little claim to fame was pointing out guys like Mike Cernovich and Roger Stone and a couple others, and saying, "You guys got to pay attention to this. These guys are nuts." And they got way too much influence over a lot of people, kind of thing. And Sam and Michael were going, "What are you talking about? There's just some weird guy on Twitter." And then some of those people that Matt Binder was pointing out ended up essentially in the Trump administration. Yeah. And they're going like, "Holy shit, this guy was onto it from the beginning. Why didn't we listen to him?" Well, I mean, it was obviously a crazy situation, but yeah, the fact that these crazies that were just considered outright crazies, some of them ended up being in positions of significant power. And this guy, I mean, he's rapid. I think he's rapidly jumped the shark. Oh, yeah. And he's on the way down. But his level of influence for a
period of time was ridiculous.
Yeah.
The amount of literally, I mean, he could still almost call it a victory over Sam. The fact that he got him fired even temporarily.
Yeah.
The fact that someone can send a couple of emails to a major network, and bang, someone loses their job immediately. Yeah, it's outrageous.
And I think that's all I actually wrote down.
I think I might have to do a regular Twitter report on the ongoings of crazies on Twitter. I do spend a little bit of time on there, so it's something the last few months I've gotten a little more familiar with. So
yeah, no.
although as a platform, I think it's kind of on the wane. It seems to have an inordinate amount of representation on even mainstream media, because they'll talk about tweets and things like that, which I don't quite get why they do that. But
I didn't do Corey Watch this week.
Oh.
I've been pretty disciplined there, and because I've been so busy at work, I have not been keeping up to date with what Corey's up to. Oh well, that's all I've got.
That's all I've got.
That's a wrap.
Cheers.